Most people believe wealth is measured in dollars, cars, or houses. But real wealth has never been about numbers in your bank account. It's about owning something scarce, something the rest of the world doesn't understand yet. And that's why zero point zero 0.01 worth of Bitcoin, a fraction so small it feels insignificant, could be the most valuable thing that you ever own. Because wealth isn't built by following the herd, it's built by holding what the herd will eventually chase. See, we tend to think in terms of dollars, euros, yens, pounds, or whatever fiat currency that we're used to. But Bitcoin isn't just another investment. It's not a stock. It's not gold. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. Bitcoin is actually a paradigm shift in how the world stores and transfers value. And when you realize just how scarce it truly is, and when you really run the numbers, even owning just a fraction of Bitcoin can completely change your financial future. So let's go ahead and explore why zero point zero 0.01 worth of Bitcoin might not just make you wealthy, it might make you part of the global financial elite. And why the biggest risk isn't buying too late, the biggest risk is ignoring this shift altogether. So first, let's go ahead and talk about supply. Now, everyone knows the maximum supply of Bitcoin is 21 million coins, and that number will never change. But here's what most people forget. A large portion of those coins are already gone forever. Lost wallets, lost private keys, and Satoshi's untouched stash. So realistically, the circulating supply is closer to 15, 16 million. But now let's go ahead and zoom out, because there are about 8 billion people on the planet today. But by the time Bitcoin reaches full maturity, it'll probably be closer to 10 billion people. Now divide 15 million Bitcoin by 10 billion people, and what do you get? Well, on average, that's just 0.0015 worth of Bitcoin and per person. So let that sink in. If Bitcoin becomes the global reserve asset, the average share of Bitcoin per human being is less than 2/1000th of a coin, which means if you're sitting on 0.01 worth of Bitcoin, you already hold several times more than the global average. Now, to put that into perspective, think about gold. For thousands of years, gold was the ultimate store of wealth, and if you had just a few ounces, you were considered wealthy. Now, not because an ounce of gold is physically massive, but because the supply is scarce and the demand is universal. Now, Bitcoin is digital gold on steroids, transportable, verifiable, divisible, and incorruptible. Now, owning 0.01 worth of Bitcoin today is like owning a small but meaningful piece of a new digital gold rush. And history shows us that the early minority who understands scarcity will always benefit the most. Now, some of you might be thinking, okay, but zero point zero 0.01 worth of Bitcoin is only worth a few $1,000s today. How could that possibly make me rich? Well, here's the thing. It's not about today's value. It's about the inevitable outcome of supply meeting demand. Now, if Bitcoin does what it's designed to, and that's become the hardest, soundest money the world has ever seen, then demand will eventually stretch far beyond today's market. So if we go ahead and do the math, we'll see that global household wealth today is estimated at over $500 trillion. Now, if Bitcoin simply captured just 10% of that, not 100%, but just 10%, well, that's $50 trillion flowing into Bitcoin. Now divide that by 15 million real circulating coins, and you're looking at a price per coin of around 3.3 million. which means that zero point zero 0.01 worth of Bitcoin is now worth around $33,000. And that's just a conservative scenario, because if Bitcoin actually becomes the backbone of the global monetary system, and if one Satoshi, the smallest unit of Bitcoin, equals $1, then a single Bitcoin would be worth $100 million. So that puts your zero point zero 0.01 worth of Bitcoin at $1 million. And this is where most people miss the point. They think Bitcoin is expensive today because it's already over $100,000. They look at unit bias. One whole coin seems out of reach, so they think they're late. But they're not late, they're early. And in the same way people thought $100 Bitcoin was too late in 2013, or $1,000 Bitcoin was too late in 2017. Now, the question isn't, am I too late? The real question is, am I willing to understand this before the rest of the world does? Now, let's talk psychology. Because why do most people fail to act on opportunities like this? Now, it's not because the math doesn't make sense, it's because they can't imagine a future that looks different from today. So they're anchored to the present. Now, when cars were invented, people said, but where are the horses going to go? And when the internet arrived, people said, why would I ever send an email when I can just write a letter? Now, when Bitcoin came along, people said, why would I ever trust digital money? Now, every paradigm shift looks absurd at first until it doesn't. And by the time it doesn't, the window of opportunity has already closed. Now, think about the early days of the internet. In the 1990s, domain names were practically free. You could buy cars.com or hotels.com, and for pocket change, and because most people laughed at the idea. Why would I ever need a website? The internet is just a fad. But a few visionaries saw the potential. They bought up those names and held on to them, and today some of those domain names have sold for tens of millions of dollars. Now, not because the world changed, but because the world finally realized their scarcity and their value. Now, that's what zero point zero 0.01 worth of Bitcoin could represent today. A tiny slice of digital real estate, only this time it's not websites, it's money, it's self. Global, borderless, and incorruptible. But here's the kicker. You don't even need to go all in, because this isn't about betting the farm. It's about understanding asymmetric upside, risking a little for potentially life-changing returns. Now, the kind of opportunity that comes maybe once in a lifetime. Because if Bitcoin fails and zero point zero 0.01 worth of Bitcoin goes to zero, well, you've lost around $1,000. Painful, but not catastrophic. But if Bitcoin succeeds and zero point zero 0.01 worth of Bitcoin becomes worth hundreds of thousands, even millions, then you've permanently altered your financial trajectory. Now, that's the definition of asymmetric risk. Small downside, infinite upside. So when you hear people dismiss Bitcoin is too expensive, or when you hear them say, I can't afford a whole coin, just remember this. You don't need a whole coin. You just need enough to put yourself ahead of the average, and that could be as little as 0.01 worth of Bitcoin. So the real question is this. Will you let the voice of skepticism, fear, or short-term thinking hold you back? Or will you take a small step today that your future self will thank you for? Because in 10, 20, 30 years, Bitcoin will look back at these days and say you could have bought 0.01 worth of Bitcoin for just a few $1,000s. So why didn't you? And the people who acted will quietly smile, knowing they saw the paradigm shift before everyone else. So don't get lost in the noise. Don't worry about whether you can afford a whole Bitcoin. Focus on what you can do. Even small steps matter. Study Bitcoin, understand self-custody, build a savings mindset, because the future will belong to those who prepare for it. And maybe, just maybe, zero point 0.01 worth of Bitcoin will be enough to change your life and forever. Now, if you want to go deeper down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, then check out my ebook down below, because it's the wake-up call they never wanted you to read. Now, I do also have to chuck this disclaimer in here as well, and I highly suggest just pausing the video and having a little read. Now, if you've made it this far, and if you're looking for something else to watch, then click right here and have a watch of this.